Good evening and welcome to our live audience. Y'all, it's been a minute, but welcome to 2023. This is Queen B. Queen B is presented by Selma and the Monte Method. We come to you live every single month talking about very, very important topics that make it make sense. We're going to help you make it make sense about a lot of important topics related to our sexual wellness, related to our mental wellness, and our safety. So this evening, it is an honor and a pleasure to have some experts here for as guests on Queen B. My name is Lydia Chatmon. I serve as the Prevention Director at Selma, and I am so delighted to have Adrienne Brown, MARTHINA Carter, and MISTY Johnson with me. Yes, this evening we are going to have some fun, but talk about a really serious topic. And if you saw the promotional information, some of you all might have seen, like, wait a minute, modern day slavery? What in the world? But modern day slavery is what we are using to refer to human trafficking. January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And in honor of that, we are delighted to have Misty with us, MARTHINA and Adrienne, to talk about this very important topic. So if you are unfamiliar with human trafficking, or if you or someone you know needs to have this information, y'all take time right now, pull out your handy dandy smartphone and share. This video is live on Facebook. So we want you to ask questions. We want you to tag, right, people that you want to chime in. Honey, we're going to have a good time, but talking about a very serious topic. Want to invite each of you ladies to share a little bit about yourselves and the organizations that you are a part of. And I'll ask, if you don't mind, Adrienne, if you don't mind sharing with us who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Adrienne Brown. I am the founder and CEO of Diamond Ministries Incorporated, based out of Georgia. And I am a domestic violence survivor. What our organization does is we do education and prevention around sex trafficking, domestic violence, and HIV. And we do that nationwide. And I'm excited to be here and to help share any information that I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Mrs. Misty Johnson, welcome aboard. I know that you are the SART and SANE coordinator. And if you don't mind sharing with us what those acronyms mean, you work for an organization called One Place Family Justice Center. If you don't mind sharing with us, who are you and what do you do?
Sure, absolutely, Miss Lydia. So my name is Misty Johnson. I am the SART SANE coordinator for our program named STAR. SART stands for Sexual Assault Response Team. Every county that we work in, we have a response team made up of law enforcement, healthcare officials, Selma Air, just various community partners where we work in a collaborative effort to help victims. SANE is a sexual assault nurse examiner. Basically, it just means I'm a forensic nurse. We have 10 forensic nurses in our program that assist with sexual assault kits, also known as rape kits. I'm the program coordinator, so it's a big undertaking, but with MARTHINA and our amazing team over at One Place, we bring it all together.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And MARTHINA, come on and introduce yourself. Tell us what you do.
I am MARTHINA Carter. I'm the crisis counselor at One Place Family Justice Center. I mostly work with sexual assault victims under the STAR program, but we're also working on trying to get a counselor for the domestic violence victims. We tend to serve counties in Butler County, Crenshaw County, Dallas, Perry, Wilcox, and then we also have Montgomery, Otago, Elmore, and did I forget one, Misty? I'm sorry.
Chilton, but it's more domestic violence up there in Chilton.
So yeah, I provide counseling services for the victims if they want it for acute, which is up to 8 weeks. And once I get done, I refer them out to the next level, which is usually some is private practice, or I refer them to Family Sunshine Center.
Awesome. So as you can tell, we are well equipped to talk about this topic of human trafficking. But I want to first ask you ladies the question around, are there other kinds of trafficking? What kinds of trafficking are there? And is trafficking just another word for smuggling? I'll toss this over to Adrian, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, trafficking in a form of fashion is smuggling, because you're actually sneaking someone into a certain place. So, I mean, if you really look at smuggling, even if you take it to illegal paraphernalia, that's what sneaking something into a place where, it's not supposed to be. So therefore, that's the way that I look at it. I'm not sure how my colleagues here or other guests feel about it.
Absolutely. I want to ask each of you all to chime in. Look, this is it's a conversation, y'all. So we can have this around robin. Do you all define trafficking as smuggling or sneaking, or how would you all define trafficking?
So Lydia, if I can jump in here real quick, there's the STAR program, we kind of are twofold. MARTHINA is very emotional support. She deals a lot with the psychological and emotional needs of patients. I'm more of the legal aspect, so I have a little bit more legal knowledge. So our answers can vary widely. Just in from my standpoint, from a legal standpoint, it is two different things, in my opinion. Smuggling is where you're crossing state lines, country lines, boundaries, things like that. With trafficking, the difference with trafficking is you can stay in the exact same place, you can stay in the exact same house, and be trafficked from there. There are different traffickers that never leave their house. But there are two different kinds, and sometimes they do overlap. With trafficking, there's labor, and then there's sex trafficking. With the labor, they're usually paying off some sort of a debt. Usually it's a legal immigrant being able to cross over somewhere, and they're paying for their transportation. With sex trafficking, it's more of an exploitation, where the trafficking is one party is forced to have that sexual intercourse and work to pay off a debt that they feel is owed to their traffickers. So that's from my opinion and experience. Marthina?
There's also one more type. It's the domestic servitude, and that's where you have the victims. That's the nannies, the maids, and mostly like the domestic help, where they can't really get away from their perpetrator, but they are still kind of held close, but they're working and basically giving their money back to the person that has them.
I agree with that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So we have labor trafficking, sex trafficking, and say the last one, Marthina?
Domestic servitude.
Domestic servitude. Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. So now what actually is human trafficking? I'll say, let's go, Misty.
Yes, let's go to Misty.
When we use the term human trafficking, like what are people typically going to associate with human trafficking?
Typically, human trafficking is sex exploitation. Get down to it. It's when a trafficker typically uses their victim as a workhorse. Basically, the victim works, does all the work, and the trafficker receives the gains, whether it's money, drugs, favor, whatever it is. And, you discussed something, Lydia, when you opened up about slavery. Fundamentally, it is modern slavery. As a matter of fact, years ago, the UN actually termed it as modern contemporary slavery. Victims of slavery and victims of trafficking they both have their human rights completely violated. And a lot of times they have the right to escape, but they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the structural limitation to be able to escape. So, in my opinion, it absolutely is modern day slavery. And that's what I feel trafficking is.
So when we think about human trafficking, and we are based, and all of us, aside from Adrian, are based in the state of Alabama, and then Adrian is in Georgia. So now, does human trafficking actually impact states like Alabama and Georgia, rural communities? Marthina, what's your take on that? What's the truth about that?
Well, shockingly, we have it quite often. As of 2021, as of 2021, it's basically over 6,000 victims that come through the state daily. Um, and they come through the main roads, I-20, I-65. They are also through I-59 and I-10. And they also are known to be in like the different hotels, the truck stops. Some of the different ones that are kind of well known are like in Bessemer, Oxmoor Road up in Birmingham, and Montgomery off of the Southern Boulevard is one of the hotels that they actually pulled up. And they have other places. Dothan is one of the hottest spots, which really shocked me. And it's really for Alabama, it's bigger in Birmingham, and then it's actually really, really big in Huntsville, and that kind of shocked me a lot as well.
Yeah, because as I'm listening to you name these places, it's like, oh my goodness. So the interstates are really where we see a lot of the trafficking occurring. And did you say 6,000 a day?
Daily.
Wow. Whew. Okay, so tell a friend to tell a friend. This is important, y'all. 6,000 men, women, and children, because this is not just limited to women. I know that a lot of us may be fans of popular shows like Law and Order. I know there's SVU, their sexual victim. Yes. Their sexual victims unit. That particular show has covered human trafficking quite a bit. But the majority of those folks are women that are featured as the victims there. But are men, women, and children are victims of this type of trafficking, right, Adrian?
That is correct. So, I mean, you see it, all across the board, small, teenage boys, girls, women. I've met a woman not long ago that, her family actually trafficked her inside their home. As Misty was talking about, you can be, trafficked inside your house. So it does not matter, age, sex. It doesn't discriminate. It happens to a lot more people than we actually really think about.
Wow. So now, geez, this is a lot. Where though is human trafficking most common, or is there a particular kind of community that we see more human trafficking taking place? Misty?
Everywhere, everywhere. Marthina was talking about Huntsville and Birmingham. We often see more stings, police stings out in that area. However, it's happening next door to you. It's happening, in towns with population less than 500. I mean, it is everywhere in some shape, form, or fashion. I believe Adrian was talking about, in the homes, we have familial trafficking. And I mean, it's, where they're trafficking out their children to their friends or, their partners or whatnot. It's everywhere. And until, I don't know about Adrian or Marthina, but until I started working in this field, I was completely blindsided and was like, oh, well, I'm so glad we live in Alabama. This doesn't really happen here. No, it is big. And like Marthina said, Dothan is huge hot spot because it is on the way back from the beach, and Panama City is a large trafficking hub. You have Atlanta right there, and then Birmingham. So it's everywhere, unfortunately.
So
Can
now
I
is
for a
it,
second,
go
Lydia?
ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know you guys mentioned Huntsville, and I'm wondering why Huntsville, or does it have anything to do with the rise of like the television show that's there, and people coming in and doing that, or it's just because it's just another city town,
Marthina?
From what I saw, Huntsville is one of those growing cities. It's been growing, but now that TV show is there, it's getting more popular, as you just kind of suggested. So it's like, okay, there's this other way out, so let's use this city as well. I guess because it's literally right there at the top of the state, and it's right there by Tennessee, and it's really not that far from Nashville and stuff like that.
That's true.
Okay.
So now, is there a role though that violence plays? Because I know you ladies have mentioned that trafficking can be occurring in the house next door to us, right? And it could be a family member that's being trafficked. But is there an element of violence that's always connected to human trafficking, Marthina?
I say yes, but I feel like it's, even if it's not physical, majority of the time they're being abused mentally, verbally, financially is one of the biggest ways I saw. Because a lot of the times they're not making, or when they get the money, they're not seeing, but if they get part of it, maybe, a few dollars, or they get the money and have to give it to the person that's over them. They're not able to have control over their identity cards and things like that. So it's like the person is controlling their whole life.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies,
I
do you
100%. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I was inviting you to please share your thoughts
No,
around violence.
I was going to say I agree wholeheartedly with Marthina. Even a lot, there are times that it doesn't start out that way. It does start out with the manipulation and the tit for tat, and but trafficking is all about control and power. And majority of the time, the tactics that traffickers use is going to be intimidation and fear. And in order to subject that onto their victims, they're usually, I'm going to say 99% of the time, it's going to be some kind of violence. In my experience, I have never seen a trafficked victim that didn't experience physical violence, but if not physical, absolutely financial abuse and emotional and psychological.
Right. I agree, Misty, with that wholeheartedly. Yes, I've seen that as well.
Wow. So now, in the Black community, we hear this thing, human trafficking, and for some reason, many of us seem to, not think that it applies to Black people. So what are some of the most common myths that we have in the Black community, especially among Black women when it comes to human trafficking?
It won't happen to us.
Yes.
It can't happen to us.
Or
Yeah.
that is, it's just sex, especially this day and age. And I hate to say it because I'm a millennial. I'm barely sitting on that edge, but I'm a millennial. But a lot of people these days are like, it's just sex. I'm getting something out of it. They're getting something out of it. It doesn't matter because, it's transactional. So they don't see anything wrong with it. Victims see traffickers, traffickers provide them with food, with shelter, with drugs, and all you have to do is give me sex for it. What's the big deal about that? But they soon realize that they are not in control and they can't bargain for that control. And then it turns into something completely that they didn't realize it was. So whether it doesn't happen to them or they just don't recognize it as trafficking because they think it's just transactional.
Mhm.
Wow. Wow. So now, what then do we say when we think about human trafficking? And I want to just kind of dive into the transporting of folks across borders, because I do want to keep going back for our viewers and mentioning the fact that you all have stated that a lot of times trafficking can occur when it comes to in a home, right? So it could be a family that is actually trafficking someone. But human trafficking really doesn't require transporting people anywhere, right?
Right.
It does.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Adrian.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with Lydia that that is correct, but I will elaborate on that as well. With Diamond Ministries, having partnered with Street Grace, who's a educational organization here in Georgia, and just speaking with them and talking to some of their ladies, they've had students that were kids in school, and they went to school throughout the week, and on the weekend, was when they were out, doing these, air quotes transactions. So, again, it's, it can be within the home. They're, oh, I'm going to stay at my friend's house. And then, people are being trafficked through that home as well. So, but Misty, you were going to say.
No, I was honestly just agreeing with you. I 100% wholeheartedly agree with you.
So now you ladies are really putting this information out here, and I'm so grateful to each of you all for being here with us this evening, because this is an important topic. This is a topic that we really don't talk about a lot. This is a topic that is impacting our community, regardless of the fact if we live in a more rural space, and like you said earlier, have 500 people as the population, or if there are 500,000 folks living in your community. So from small cities, mid-sized cities, we think about typically New York, San Francisco, Orlando, like larger cities, as places where people are being victimized and where human trafficking is truly an issue. But to know that we need to be on the lookout in the state of Alabama, across the South, for human trafficking taking place is really, really important. So now my question to you all is related to the victims, the folks who get caught up in human trafficking. What does a victim of human trafficking look like? And I'd love for each of you ladies to answer that question. Let's start with Marthina, and then we'll just come all the way around.
From what with working with it in my research, there's not a definite look when it comes to the victims. There are some signs that they may have, but it's not always guaranteed. Most of the time, they're not going to really tell you, who they really are. Sometimes they might not remember who they are. They might not want to talk to you long. They're going to try to hurry up and talk, or they'll repeat the same thing that's like it's scripted, because it's what they've been trying to do. Of course, they won't have eye contact or things like that. And when it comes down to their finances, they won't really have much money, or they'll say that they don't control their debit card or their bank account. So those are some of the things. And then sometimes they can be malnourished, and you can tell that they really don't eat as they should and things like that.
Wow. What's your experience, Adrian? And then we'll ask Misty the same question. Like, what does a victim of human trafficking look like?
I mean, it can, you can come from any background, any, socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter. We've, run across, people, middle class homes, poor, even, wealthy, homes where, those that have been trafficked are, caught up in that, even supportive homes, where you see that the parents are even involved with, their children, or, teenagers, they're involved in their life and everything like that. But then that's just that secret, that they're holding, that, they're actually involved in. You will see them, traveling across state lines, or, as Misty, pointed out, it's just in the home as well. You just, there, it goes along the lines of domestic violence. You just never know. Domestic violence does not discriminate, and sex trafficking does not either.
Wow, Misty.
Honestly, Lydia, what does it look like? Look in a mirror. That's the most scariest thing I can tell you, because trafficking victims, they look like you, they look like me, they look like Adrian, they look like Marthina, the girl next door. I think we've gotten so used to these movies, like Julia Roberts, where she's being, prostituted out, and we see this beautiful young girl, or we're used to the complete opposite, the the complete opposite of the spectrum, where we think of a woman that's skin and bones, and she's got teeth missing, and she's a meth addict, and they don't necessarily need, have to look like what we think it's going to look like on television shows or social media. In return, traffickers look the exact same too. They look like you, they look like me. They're street hustlers, they're stay-at-home parents with the academically gifted children, they're prominent business owners, they're pastors, they're first ladies. There's not, it would blow your mind to see some of these, and what they look like. I mean, they look like us.
Yeah.
Listen, now you just talked about the traffickers, and you said pastors and first ladies, and I'm sure everybody caught my eyes like, wait now.
Yeah, unfortunately, because they're already in a position of power. They're already in a very statuesque position to acquire influence. So, I mean, it's a perfect position, and we've seen it.
And, also, Misty, we see it with young girls that are, in church, young boys, and that's how they're actually, recruited in as well. So in 2019, I did a tour, a 5-city tour on sex trafficking, domestic violence, and HIV. And during that time, a young girl, told, she called me, and she's like, look, I think someone just tried to traffic me, because she was like, someone came up to her at the gas station, and they were like, hey, where are you from? She said, this is the town I'm from. Oh, are you from the east side or the west side? And she's like, there's no side to this particular town. Where are you going? Going to Bible study. Oh yeah, we know about Bible study. Won't you come Bible study with us? And it was 2 girls, but they weren't standing side by side to her. One was standing in front of her, and the other one was behind her.
Females. That is one of the largest traffickers too, is females. A lot of people see SVUs and they see all these males, but females are notorious because innately females tend to trust females a little bit more, and they use that trust to coerce people and manipulate, just the same as they use that trust for pastors and first ladies, because those are people you're supposed to trust and rely on the most.
So now, one thing that you all 3 of you all have alluded to, is the importance of us not trusting television shows and even social media when it's not sources like this, where experts are being asked questions, and folks are given the opportunity to ask questions live, of people who have tremendous experience in these areas. So basically, we should not be trusting television shows, right, to help us understand what's happening when it comes to things like human trafficking.
Yeah.
So now, question. I know that Adrian, I think it was you that spoke to the fact that you recognize that it's not just, and all of you all kind of talked about it, that it's not just impoverished communities, right, that are that have, we have a special guest. But it's not just poor communities, right? It's not just people who live at or below the poverty level that are experiencing human trafficking as a reality, but that middle class neighborhoods and other communities, wealthy communities, can actually see that. So, want to ask you about whether, and I think Marthina, you talked about this a little bit, whether victims of human trafficking self-identify or if they ask for help immediately. And if not, like what can we do to help people who are experiencing human trafficking?
Well, when it comes to it, sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. It just depends on the situation most of the time. But if they do, the best thing to do is to reach out to law enforcement. Do not try to save them yourselves. Reach out to law enforcement if you know of a actual task force. Then, especially if you have those people's information, then reach out to them so that they can, do what they need to do and step in and make sure that the right steps are taken and that your life is not put in jeopardy as well.
Adrian, what's been your experience when it comes to that? Or what would your recommendation be?
I always reach out to someone that is a professional, just as, Misty and Marthina. I would, because we're just a referral agency, we do counseling about domestic violence, but we are not, a human trafficking organization that, cares for and gives shelter or anything like that. So we definitely have partnerships with, law enforcement and with other agencies that can actually help them and be able to, walk them through what they're going through.
And so I do just want to encourage our viewers to like, tag, and share this video. One of the things that I put in the chat is that we are encouraging you to call the crisis hotline. One Place Family Justice Center is based in Alabama, right? So you can give them a call. Their number is 334-262-7378. Consult a professional. If you have questions, if you or someone you know may be a victim of human trafficking, get professional help. At the end of the day, we are not, as much as we like to put on our capes and, think that we're superheroes, it's always better to err on the side of caution and ask a professional how to help you handle this situation, and even being able to escape. Misty, have you ever helped to facilitate someone escaping, or what is what can we anticipate? What could that potentially look like? Is there a plan that we need to have in place when it comes to, because I know I've heard about it for domestic violence. That's my speaker.
I was like,
listen, we all have stuff going on.
Exactly.
But how do we, how can we help facilitate that? What does that typically look like? What's actually happening when someone is trying to disconnect from their trafficker?
Well, that's kind of multifaceted. Like Marthina said, definitely would not approach a situation right out. I'm a little iffy about the law enforcement, and I'll tell you why. And that's weird coming from me because I'm very pro law enforcement. I used to work for MPD, so I'm very pro. I work really close with the Trafficking Task Force of Alabama. They're amazing. We've seen numerous victims, and they look different each time. It's so, for example, with law enforcement, we want to be able to, if they're not a vulnerable population, they're not under the age of 19, they're not, elderly, they're in their right mind, there's no cognitive defect or anything like that, they actually have a choice whether they want to involve law enforcement or not. That's 100% their choice if they want to involve law enforcement. Would we recommend? Absolutely, because they're the professionals. Unfortunately, African American, especially African American females, are very distrustful of police, and that kind of goes back to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and recently what happened in Memphis. So it's very difficult to expect somebody that is already distrustful of the police to want to feel like that's their savior. They can call us and we have, like Adrian was saying, we're resources. We actually have the people that know what to do kind of sitting behind us. So they can use us as a liaison. And I will give you, Lydia, that 262 number is our office number. We definitely want to give that to anybody Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. If there's an emergency and it is an after hours, we do have an on-call team for our crisis intervention line. So it's a crisis line, and I'll give you that number. It is 334-213-1227. Again, 334-213-1227. And we are based in Montgomery. But, honestly, 7 to 8 out of 10 victims that leave trafficking situations end up returning back because they don't feel like they have that support system, and it's highly common for them just to run back. You have to be non-judgmental. There are certain do's and don'ts that we are aware of that we do. And, maybe another time we would love to share those with you. We're not judgmental. We don't badmouth traffickers, because if they go back to them, the next time they're ready to leave, they're not going to want to come to us, because they're going to feel like they are being judged and that they've let us down and they're disappointing us. And that's absolutely not the case whatsoever. You can leave 10, 20 times. Every single time, we're going to be here 100% for you. So I hope that kind of answered your question.
It did. It really, really did. It gave a lot of insight. And so I want to ask, though, because we talked about what the perpetrators tend to look like, and we're not being judgmental either for the victims or the people who are victimizing those who are being trafficked. But I want to ask you, ladies, about if, and this is particularly because right now, Alabama, I know I'm in Selma, right? And we are in the process of recovering from a natural disaster. And there are lots of folks who are without secure shelter. And so I'm wondering whether natural disasters tend to be like a hunting ground, if you will, for people who are traffickers. I guess I'll invite all three of you all to answer that question. But based on your experience, could natural disasters, or are there other things that tend to act as ready hunting grounds for those folks who are perpetrators of trafficking? Misty, look.
I'm the one that talks most, so I'll start out. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody that is vulnerable, that means vulnerable as in, have had that come from abusive homes, that have had a bad breakup. You could come from a great home. Adrian was saying very well off, rich family, wealthy family. If you've had a bad breakup, that makes you vulnerable. Every single human being in their lifetime is going to be vulnerable. So that allows all of us to become targets. And unfortunately, when you're down in Selma, that allow, Selma with y'all's hurricane, tornado recently, the bad thing about that is the natural disasters like Hurricane Katrina and like your tornado, they don't have that shelter to rely on. So you have a perfect opportunity for someone to be like, oh, you need a place to stay? Oh, it's okay. Come stay with me. Oh, you need food? Oh, here, I got plenty. I'll help you out. Oh, you want to get high? You can have some of my drugs. And then it's going to turn into, well, I'm taking care of you basically. So the least you could do is to help out around here a little bit. So, and that's, just, go on a few dates with these guys, or, give them a couple of sexual favors. And then it doesn't just turn out like it does in the movies. Occasionally, very, very rarely does it. But finding that vulnerable population and they're leading them into that path, into that route.
Wow, Adrian, what's been your experience?
I totally agree with, what Misty said. And, just, one thing that went through my mind as far as, there being a, natural disaster there, you have people that are outside of the community coming in, right, Misty and Marthina?
Yeah.
So you have contractors that are coming in, they're setting up these little campers. They have,
Helpers.
yes, they have money, you
Yeah.
know, um, where, they can offer, someone something, in exchange for what they're asking for. So, again, it's, about them being vulnerable and, being, victim to, natural disasters. And, again, as Misty said, if you're vulnerable, then you could possibly be a victim.
It's a great point. I didn't even think about that, Adrian. That's a great point with outsiders coming in, these saviors coming in. Hurricane Katrina had thousands of people from all over the country come in to help, quote unquote, help,
Yes,
And, from the news sources, we saw amazing helpers, but there's no telling how many people took advantage of that disaster.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. So mentally, what's happening for a victim of human trafficking, Marthina? Like when I'm hearing what Misty and Adrian are describing, and folks essentially being taken advantage of because they're in a tough situation, had no control over what happened as far as like a natural disaster or what have you. Like what's happening emotionally, mentally for a victim of human trafficking?
It's to the point where for some it's traumatic. They feel like they don't know what they're going to do, and then when they do meet those people who are able to give them what they need, whether it's financially or even if it's just that ear to talk to, like they need that listening ear, and that person's there, so they might turn to them, and that person uses that and manipulates them. It could also be with the misplacement if they lost a lot of stuff, and that person offers them a place to stay, like Misty said. But especially, I wouldn't even say it was just mentally, it's emotional. For some, it's probably physical as well, because if they were in a home, especially where it was a peaceful home, and then now they're separated, what if they've fallen into a home where now they're dealing with physical stuff going on? And then they're also getting to the point where they're starting to change socially now since everything has happened. So it can play on more than just the mental, psychologically, it can mess them up all the way around, honestly.
So now I want to ask you ladies about this term grooming. I've heard it used when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to sexual assault. Is there does grooming occur when it comes to trafficking? And if so, what does that look like? What can we, if we from the outside looking in, what are we looking for? Or like you said, Adrian, the young lady that you described, with the two girls who approached her. Like what was that grooming? Like what does that look like, Adrian?
Yes, and that's what grooming is. It's building that, level of trust. We're interested in the same thing. Let's be friends. After a while, you become friends. You have things in common. You're hanging out together. And then you're actually, you're introduced into that world, and you don't want to let that person down. You still want them to be your friend because you have, mutual things in common. And that's what, the grooming process is because you have a relationship with that particular person. And that's the same, that it goes with, domestic violence or intimate partner violence. It's a relationship when it comes to the violence of any sort, physical, mental, financial, as Marthina stated earlier. Um, and that's really, what that is. You're grooming, you're getting that person, ready to say, hey, we have something in common, and we like the same things. And just building a relationship on top of that.
Wow. What about you, Misty? Like what's your take on grooming?
I mean, I agree 100% with Adrian. building that rapport. She's talking about, building that relationship between them, building that rapport. That's huge. They have to develop that. They have to offer you a sense of well-being, a sense of that they're doing you a favor, that they're just a good person and they're doing this for you, for you to start developing that trust. One thing that Marthina had said, or that we had spoke about earlier, they have a lot of distrust when they come to us afterwards. And that's mainly because they feel like they have put this trust into somebody that they've completely been blindsided. So I think, Adrian hit the nail on the head with that developing that rapport. And it's sad that we have to be so suspicious about things like that. But unfortunately, I think being educated and just being aware of that and just knowing, just being cognizant of it. Excuse me. In reference to, you had said something about warning signs. It depends on where they're at. Honestly, if, from a medical standpoint, if we see them in the ER, the trafficker typically refuses them to let them go anywhere. Marthina had mentioned earlier, they typically are the mouthpiece. They normally talk where the victim just kind of sits there. Even when, someone says, hey, what's going on today? What brings you in? They're usually sitting there, their eyes down. They typically don't make eye contact. Anything that could be considered potential communication between the victim and someone else is banned completely with traffickers. They don't want you to communicate with anybody. They want to keep you where you are. Medically, we see signs, gynecological signs with women, whether it be recurrent STDs, even HIV infection, external genitalia injuries, things like that. Also, signs of abuse. Marthina was talking about bruises, contusions, abrasions, lacerations, things that look very suspicious. I always tell everybody that works in the ER, if you suspect human trafficking, if your intuition is telling you something, do not disregard it. It is 100%. Say you're sorry than to allow a trafficker to walk out, because you may not see that female ever again. Very, very rarely do they bring them out in public, much less to the emergency room. So that might be that one opportunity. And we also see history of multiple abortions. So yeah, that's kind of the things that we see.
Wow. So now trust is clearly the thing, and building a rapport is clearly a part of actually what grooming is. So now, is that bond unbreakable, Marthina? Like, is that something that person has then become emotionally attached to that person? And is that why you see 70 to 80% of people who are being trafficked going back into that environment?
Right. I look at it as, especially when it comes to building rapport for us, you provide a safe place. So when they get them and they start talking to them, they give them that safe place, or they manipulate them to think that it's their safe place. But all in all, later on, it turns out to be probably one of the worst places they can be. But once you usually get a person in their safe place and they're comfortable, they trust you, as you said. And especially if it turns into that relationship of boyfriend, girlfriend, or he just uses me to do this ever so often as a favor. It kind of gets to that point where they have that love for them, but it's not genuine love.
They don't know. It's almost like they don't know any better. We're seeing this a lot with adolescents, a lot of teenagers, honestly, which is terrible. We see some 13, 14-year-olds that we've seen where they're in a relationship and it's their first serious relationship. They're infatuated. And at that age, everything is so serious. And the boyfriend asks the girlfriend, hey, I owe Bob over here $50 from the game, would you mind doing him, a favor, a sexual favor, just to, that way I don't have to pay that $50. she's so enamored that she doesn't see it as anything other than just doing a favor. And she's a good girlfriend about that. That is 100% trafficking. And I think because we don't really people don't really understand the different types of trafficking and the education's not out there, they don't realize that. So, Marthina, that is 100% just on the dot with that.
My Lord. So acknowledging that teens are particularly vulnerable, parents, if you're watching or if you know a parent who has a teen, make sure that you share this video because it is important that we start to have these conversations with our adolescents, with our teenagers, so that they won't get caught up, and if they happen to be involved in a relationship that is indeed trafficking, that we can actually consult professionals, right? The information is in the chat. I do just want to reiterate, for emergencies, One Place Family Justice Center can be reached by calling 334-213-1227. They are on call and ready to serve. I do quickly, because I know our time is getting a little short, but I want to just quickly ask about the long-term impact, right? You ladies have shared that 70 to 80% of victims of human trafficking tend to go back into that environment. But let's say that this person is able to escape that environment and stays away. What could be some things that we see as the long-term impact of having been involved in trafficking? Adrian, and then I'd love for Marthina and Misty to chime in as well.
I'm going to leave that to Adrian and Marthina. I think they definitely have a better sense of that. I think that's more along their scope. I'm more of an acute type. So I think they're the experts. I'm gonna defer to them on that one.
So Adrian and then Marthina, what could some of the long-term impact?
What I've seen, and I just want to put this out there as well, that, of course, we're talking about, women and men, girls and boys, and, we may be looking at it from a heterosexual standpoint, but we also have to know that, women and men, boys and girls, LGBTQ community is affected by this as well. So with us being an organization that's open to everyone, a lot of the effects that I've seen, and, even in the LGBTQ community is, and the heterosexual community is depression, anxiety. I've had a transgender woman that we were helping at one point, and suffered from, paranoia, schizophrenia, and just different things like that. Just, thinking that she's always watched, even when we had her in even when she was in a safe place. So you will see all of that. There's trust issues that go along with that, as far as not trusting anyone, and even being in a situation where they've been taken out of that situation and put into a safe house with others that have been trafficked as well. And that being a safe space, not even trusting others that are recovering from trafficking as well. So it takes a very long time for recovery to happen. And again, just like with domestic violence, of course, that person, they have a psychological hold on you, and therefore, you just end up going back to that person. Marthina, what are your thoughts?
You took most of everything that I wanted to say, but I do want to add, along with that, you do have the trauma that's there. So PTSD is likely. They have the traumatic events where they have flashbacks and all that kind of stuff going on as well. But I also feel that for some, once they get out of the situation or freed, it's like they get to the point where they don't know how to go back into normal society at that point. They don't know how to, get a job and maintain a job. They don't know how to be social and have friends anymore, because when they were in that situation, they weren't able to have friends, or the friends that they had were the ones that were, allowing them to be put out on the streets and things like that. So that part really, you took everything I said, but yeah, I just want to add the PTSD part. And then for some, it's also the part they don't know how to get back together financially either, because they're so used to someone taking every penny that they get.
Right.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to reintroduce, someone to, living, as we call a normal life when they lived the life that they've had, where they didn't have to worry about food or shelter or anything like that. All they had to do was just perform.
And so I'm really hoping that folks who are tuned in are connecting the dots when it comes to what you ladies are saying as far as like the long term, like the path, the journey that people are on, right, when they escape from being trafficked. Because think about it, what happens if we have to rebuild our finances, rebuild our mental stability and health, right? Get a hold on our emotions, if we have to relearn how to communicate with people in a positive way. That can be scary. That can be totally daunting. So when you hear the statistic and you're thinking, from a judgmental perspective, and I have to take ownership, you hear 70 to 80%, like, why would you go back? You made it out. Think about all of those things that have to be rebuilt as a result of the trauma that someone has experienced while being trafficked. That can be scary, honey. And for some of us that have not been trafficked, that can be scary. So imagine actually having to do the things, whether it is domestic assistance, helping around the house, being forced to clean up other people's houses as a result of servitude, or if you have been, if it's been sex trafficking, right? Imagine that on top of thinking about those things. And like you said, having flashbacks. So I know that our time is really, really short. We have less than 5 minutes to go at this point, and you ladies have dropped some tremendously shiny diamonds. Look, I'm going to go back to Diamond Ministries. That you all have really, really dropped a lot of knowledge on us this evening. And I want to encourage everyone to like, tag, and share this video. But I also want to give you ladies the opportunity to share about the resources that you are connected to that can help people, regardless of whether they are men, women, or children, who may be going through, maybe experiencing trafficking, even traffickers. Y'all, because when I think about how many people who are become abusers because they were abused, right? So what resources, I know you all bring a lot of resources to the table. So if you don't mind sharing the resources that you all make available to the community, and contact numbers, emails, or however we need to get in touch with you, I'd be glad to share that information in the chat as well, so that folks can contact and reach out.
For us, for Diamond Ministries, you can go to our website. It's Diamond Ministries Inc. Inc.com. Again, that's diamondministriesinc.com. And we will definitely give you resources. If you're in the state of Georgia, you can Google Street Grace and give them a call. And there is a 1-800 number for human trafficking assistance. I have that in my drawer here for when I get my emergency calls, but I don't have it in my head. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I'm sure that one of you have it. And that's the information that we have in order to give throughout the state of Georgia, and then nationally as well.
Okay. Awesome. And you did say Street Grace, correct?
Correct. You have it correct. Street Grace. Yes.
Awesome. And that grace is something that we all need. Listen. Lord, grace is something that we all need. Misty, how do we get in touch with you guys at one place?
Yeah, no, so our website is www.oneplacefjc.org. You can go on there, and from there, we have a variety of different categories that we are services of people that we do service, domestic violence. But in reference to the human trafficking and sexual assault, it's going to be under the STAR page, which is also it's an umbrella underneath the One Place website. The number that you gave, the 334-262-7378, excuse me, is our office number. You can call that Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Me and Marthina are there. If we're not in the office, they'll transfer you to our phone, and they'll be more than happy to provide our email as well.
Awesome. So again, I cannot thank you ladies enough for being so willing to spend your evening, look, an hour out of your evening on a Tuesday night, honey, to share this information. You all are such valuable resources to our community, and I cannot thank you enough for being who you are, because it takes a lot to be who you are, to offer the services and to hear the stories. And I just pray that each of you has a way to release, relax, relate, and release, because you take on a lot, right? We want to thank everyone who is tuned in. Again, like, tag, and share this video. Queen Bee is brought to you every single month by Selma Air. Selma Air is the nonprofit organization based in the historic city of Selma, Alabama, responsible for 8 counties across West Central Alabama, including Dallas County. We cover Choctaw, Perry, Wilcox, Hale. I'm gonna miss somebody. Lowndes, look, Marengo. I think I almost got them all. However, we will come wherever you are, right? We work with a partner. We are partnered with aid service organizations across the state, and we don't just talk about HIV. Clearly, we don't just talk about HIV. We just had a robust conversation about human trafficking with some ladies who are doing great work across the Southeast. Hey, love, how are you doing?
Hey,
We love our babies, honey. Hey,
Hey.
you are live on Facebook, honey. You have made your debut, and we have a doggy baby. Look,
Yes, we have a fur baby on.
yeah, fur babies and real babies. Hey, handsome.
Mhm.
Oh, so thank you, ladies, again for taking time out of your evening. Thank you for tuning in, and until next month, Queen, please be aware of modern day slavery. Thanks.
Thank you for having us, Lydia.
Absolutely.